What if the hills surrounding one of Italy's most beautiful cities became the hunting ground for a monster who would terrorize lovers for decades, leaving behind a trail of mutilated bodies and unanswered questions? Welcome to SherlockMode. Florence, the jewel of Renaissance Italy, a city of art, romance, and beauty. But from 1968 to 1985, the picturesque countryside surrounding this magnificent city became the stage for one of Italy's most horrifying and mysterious serial killer cases. This is the story of Il Mostro di Firenze, the monster of Florence, a killer who hunted young couples in their most intimate moments, leaving behind a legacy of terror that would grip an entire nation. The nightmare began on a sweltering August night in 1968. Barbara Lacci, a beautiful young Sardinian woman, had driven to a cemetery parking area with her lover Antonio Lobianco for a secret rendezvous. As the couple embraced in the front seat of their white Alfa Romeo Giulietta, neither noticed the shadow moving between the headstones. The killer approached silently, methodically. 8 gunshots shattered the romantic silence. Both lovers were killed instantly. Barbara's husband, Stefano Mele, was quickly arrested and confessed to the crime in a fit of jealous rage. Case closed, or so it seemed. But Stefano Mele had unknowingly become the first piece in a deadly puzzle that would take investigators 17 years to understand. 6 years passed peacefully. Then, on September 14, 1974, the nightmare returned with devastating brutality. Pasquale Gentilecore and Stefania Pettini, both 19 years old, had parked their blue Fiat in a secluded lover's lane. The killer struck with the same cold precision. Pasquale was shot multiple times and died instantly. But this time, the monster revealed his true horrifying nature. Stefania was brutally stabbed 97 times around her sexual organs and violated with a grapevine branch. The killer had evolved from a murderer into something far more sinister. Ballistics experts made a chilling discovery. The same .22 caliber Beretta pistol used in the 1968 murders had killed Pasquale, but Stefano Mele was still in prison. Police realized they were hunting a serial killer. The monster of Florence had awakened, and he was just getting started. The gun that Mele claimed to have thrown away had somehow found its way into the hands of a predator. 7 years of silence followed. Couples continued to seek romance in the Tuscan hills, unaware that a monster was watching, waiting, planning his next strike. On June 6, 1981, the monster returned with a vengeance. Giovanni Foggi and Carmela Danuccio became his third set of victims. This time, the killer added a new horrifying element to his ritual. After shooting both victims, the monster carefully removed Carmela's sexual organs with surgical precision. He was collecting trophies, feeding some dark psychological need that investigators could barely comprehend. 4 months later, he struck again. Stefano Baldi and Susanna Cambi were making love in their car when the monster appeared like a phantom in the night. The same ritual played out. Gunshots, mutilation, and the removal of the female victim's sexual organs. The monster was becoming more confident, more methodical, more terrifying. By now, the entire province of Florence lived in fear. Young couples abandoned their romantic hideaways. Parents locked their doors earlier. The monster had transformed paradise into purgatory. But the monster was far from finished. On June 19, 1982, Paolo Mainardi and Antonella Migliorini became targets for the killer's twisted obsession. This time, something went wrong with the monster's plan. Paolo caught a glimpse of the dark figure approaching their car and tried desperately to escape, reversing at high speed. The car became stuck in a ditch. As Paolo struggled with the engine, the monster calmly approached and opened fire. Both young lovers died in each other's arms. For the first time, the monster had been interrupted. Antonella was not mutilated. Investigators wondered if this break in his ritual pattern might provide crucial clues. Over a year passed before the monster surfaced again. On September 9, 1983, he made a deadly mistake that would forever change the investigation. Horst Wilhelm Meyer and Jens-Uwe Rusch, 2 young German tourists, had parked their Volkswagen van in a secluded spot. The monster, stalking in the darkness, mistook them for a heterosexual couple. The same .22 caliber Beretta fired its deadly rounds. But when the monster discovered his mistake, he did not perform his usual ritual. 2 men lay dead, and the killer had revealed something important about his psychology. The FBI was secretly consulted to create a psychological profile. Their analysis painted a picture of a sexually impotent man, aged 40 to 45, who lived alone and harbored a pathological hatred of women engaged in sexual acts. The profile suggested the monster wore the same clothes and used the same ritual objects for each murder. He was organized, methodical, and driven by deep psychological needs that investigators could barely fathom. On July 29, 1984, Claudio Stefanacci and Pia Rontini became the monster's next victims. But this time, the killer escalated his horrifying ritual to new levels of brutality. Not only did the monster remove Pia's sexual organs, but he also cut away her left breast. He was becoming bolder, more confident, and infinitely more terrifying. The final attack came on September 8, 1985. Jean-Michel Crevecoeur and Nadine Mariette, a young French couple, had pitched their tent in what they thought was a safe camping area. Jean-Michel, an amateur sprinting champion, heard the monster approaching and tried to run. The fact that this athletic young man was caught and killed demonstrated the monster's determination and physical capabilities. Nadine suffered the same fate as the previous female victims. Her left breast and sexual organs were removed with surgical precision, but the monster wasn't finished with his psychological warfare. 3 days later, a prosecutor involved in the case received a chilling package in the mail. Inside was Nadine's nipple, accompanied by a taunting note that mocked the investigation's failures. This was the monster's final known crime. After 17 years of terror, 8 double murders, and 16 innocent victims, the killing suddenly stopped. But the mystery was far from over. The investigation that followed became almost as twisted as the crimes themselves. Police suspected everyone from poor farmers to Italy's Secret Service, from satanic cults to wealthy conspirators. In 1994, Pietro Pacciani, a violent farm worker with a history of sexual crimes, was convicted of 7 of the 8 double murders and sentenced to life in prison. Pacciani cried out in court, comparing himself to Christ on the cross. But in 1996, an appeals court overturned his conviction due to flaws in the evidence. Before he could face a retrial, Pacciani died of a heart attack in 1998. He went to his grave with his guilt or innocence still unproven. 2 of Pacciani's alleged accomplices, Mario Vanni and Giancarlo Lotti, were convicted for their involvement in some of the murders. They received life imprisonment and 26 years respectively. But many investigators believe these men were merely pawns in a larger conspiracy. Theories emerged about wealthy Florentines orchestrating the murders for satanic rituals. American author Douglas Preston and Italian journalist Mario Spizzi began investigating the case, hoping to uncover the truth behind decades of failed investigations. Their research challenged the official narrative, suggesting that the true monster had never been caught. But their investigation would lead them into a nightmare they never expected. In April 2006, Spizzi was arrested and accused of being the monster of Florence himself. Preston was interrogated as an accessory and told to leave Italy immediately. The prosecutor behind these accusations, Giuliano Magnini, believed that Spizzi and Preston were part of a conspiracy to cover up the true perpetrators of the crimes. After 22 days in prison, Spizzi was released when an appeals court found no evidence to support the charges. But the damage to both men's lives was already done. The case that inspired Thomas Harris to set his novel Hannibal in Florence had now consumed everyone who dared to seek the truth. The monster's evil seemed to spread like a virus. In 2024, new hope emerged when fresh DNA evidence was discovered on bullets from 3 of the crime scenes. This genetic material matched none of the previously convicted men. Dr. Lorenzo Iovino, an Italian oncologist practicing in America, analyzed the DNA and found it belonged to someone completely unknown to the investigation. Families of the victims are now demanding that the case be reopened. They want the DNA compared to other evidence and possibly exhume victims' bodies for additional testing. Some experts warn against getting hopes too high, suggesting the DNA could be contamination from investigators who worked the scenes over the decades. The original Beretta pistol, with its distinctive firing pin defect that marked every bullet, has never been found despite extensive searches throughout Tuscany. The Winchester Series H bullets all came from the same box, suggesting the killer had stockpiled ammunition specifically for his murderous campaign. Netflix is now producing a limited series about the Monster of Florence, directed by Stefano Sollima, the mastermind behind Gomorrah and Sicario. More than 50 years after the first murder, the Monster of Florence case remains one of Italy's greatest unsolved mysteries, having consumed investigators, journalists, and authors alike. The case exposed the dark underbelly of the Italian justice system, where ambition, incompetence, and conspiracy theories often overshadowed the search for truth. 8 couples who sought nothing more than private moments of love became victims of a predator whose identity may forever remain hidden in the shadows. The monster preyed specifically on couples during their most intimate moments, suggesting a deep psychological trauma related to sexuality and relationships. He always attacked during new moon phases, using the darkness to approach his victims undetected. This level of planning showed sophisticated criminal thinking. The monster wore surgical gloves during each attack, demonstrating an awareness of forensic evidence long before DNA technology became common in criminal investigations. His ability to approach victims undetected suggested either military training or extensive knowledge of the Tuscan countryside and its secluded locations. The surgical precision of the mutilations led some investigators to believe the monster had medical knowledge or experience with anatomy. Between 1985 and today, not a single copycat killing has occurred with the same methodology, suggesting the original monster either died or was imprisoned for other crimes. The investigation involved over 100,000 men being questioned, making it one of the largest criminal investigations in Italian history. Competition between police forces and prosecutors hampered the investigation, with different agencies pursuing conflicting theories and refusing to share crucial information. The monster's final taunt of mailing body parts to prosecutors showed a level of arrogance and psychological manipulation that terrified even experienced investigators. Some theorists believe the monster may have been multiple killers working together, explaining inconsistencies in witness descriptions and crime scene evidence. The Sardinian connection theory suggested the murders were part of traditional vendetta killings, but this was largely discredited when the pattern continued after key suspects were imprisoned. The case influenced Italian popular culture, changing dating habits throughout Tuscany and inspiring numerous books, films, and television productions worldwide. Mothers of victims have spent decades seeking justice, with some dying before ever learning the truth about who murdered their children. The Monster of Florence case represents the perfect storm of investigative failures, prosecutorial ambition, media sensationalism, and one killer's ability to vanish into the darkness. Let us analyze this case like detectives examining the evidence. The monster displayed remarkable consistency in his methods, yet investigators never found the murder weapon despite extensive searches. The fact that the same pistol killed victims over 17 years suggests either one killer or someone with access to the weapon throughout this period. The monster's ability to disappear completely after 1985 indicates either death, imprisonment, or relocation far from the Florence area. The new DNA evidence could belong to the true monster, or it might be contamination from the many investigators who worked these scenes over 5 decades. The psychological profile suggests a local resident with intimate knowledge of secluded lovers' lanes, yet no such person was ever definitively identified. The monster's sudden cessation of killing in 1985 coincided with increased police surveillance, suggesting he adapted his behavior to avoid capture. Most likely, the true monster of Florence died taking his secrets to the grave, leaving behind only the echoes of terror that still haunt the Tuscan hills. The case remains officially unsolved, a testament to one killer's ability to outwit an entire nation's law enforcement and judicial system for nearly 6 decades. Whether the monster was Pietro Pacciani, a conspiracy of wealthy cultists, or someone else entirely, his legacy changed Italy forever and reminded the world that evil can hide behind the most beautiful facades. If you enjoyed unraveling this mystery, like and subscribe to Sherlock Mode.